To the Prime Minister, Kevin Jones.
Mr. Speaker, before listing my engagements, I'm sure the whole House will wish to join me in sending our profound condolences to the family and friends of the UK serviceman killed doing his duty and serving his country in Afghanistan on Monday. We owe him and all others who have lost their lives a deep debt of gratitude. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in the House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish the Prime Minister well with his efforts and thank him and the Government for keeping us regularly updated on this issue in the House. While what has happened in China is also a huge tragedy, and the Prime Minister and I both went to the Chinese embassy yesterday, we mustn't let it knock off the front pages what is happening in Burma. I'm going to turn, if I may, to an issue of domestic politics. It may be one that explains the slightly emptier House of Commons today. Tomorrow, people in Crewe and Nantwich will go to the polls in a by-election. The abolition of the 10p tax rate is clearly a huge issue. Can the Prime Minister tell us whether the £2.7 billion compensation package will be continued into the next financial year?
We've already said that we want to continue to help those who were affected by the 10p rate, and the Chancellor will announce in the pre-budget report. But perhaps he has a question that he might answer. Does he? Oh yeah. We have announced a 2.7 billion package to help 22 million people in this country, to give lower taxes to those who have been hit by food bills and fuel bills, and the opposition cannot tell us whether they support it or not. And the reason they cannot tell us why they support it is that their priorities for tax cut are not our priorities. Their priorities are inheritance tax, stamp duty on shares, corporation tax. Let us give the tax cut to those who need it, and that is lower and middle income families in this country.
The whole House will have noticed that was no answer to the question at all. The man sitting next to the Prime Minister gave a slightly straighter answer when he was on Newsnight. Jeremy Paxman said, "So this is for 1 year only," and it's Alistair Darling, the Chancellor, said, "Yes, I made that clear this afternoon." So shouldn't everyone conclude this is a one-off, 1 year only change, the government giving some people some money this September and taking it all back again in April? It is just one tax con followed by another. The Institute for Fiscal Studies have said today that even after the changes, almost 1 million families will still be worse off, and they're amongst the poorest, and a total of 18 million families will be hit when the changes are reversed next year. Will the Prime Minister confirm those figures?
Institute of Fiscal Study has also said that in the last 10 years, the group that has benefited most from a Labour government are the lowest income groups in the country, who are more than 10% better off. And they would not have been better off if we'd taken the advice of the Right Honourable Gentleman, who tells us that he wants to introduce a budget which abolishes all of the endless reliefs and tax credits to create a basic rate of tax and abolish the top rate of tax at 40 pence. Now, that is the policy of the Conservative Party. We want to help lower and middle income families in this country. They want to help other people. He still has not answered our question. Does he support the 2.7 billion?
The last time I looked, this was still called Prime Minister's Question. This isn't like his thing on YouTube, where you ask a question now and he gives you an answer after the 21st of June. He absolutely wouldn't confirm the figures. Will the Prime Minister tell us this? He brought forward his draft Queen's speech. He introduced a mini-budget, all because of the by-election. So can he tell us this? Why hasn't he had the courage to go to Crewe and Nantwich to explain these points to people on the streets of those towns?
Mr. Speaker, he knows that it's the tradition that Prime Ministers don't go to by-election. But let me also say this. The people of Crewe and Nantwich, as the people of the country, know that 22 million households are better off by £120 as a result of the tax changes that we have made. And they know that we put £2.7 billion into doing so. What they don't know is whether the Conservative Party are going to support these changes. We are the party for low and middle income families in this country, making them better off. They are the party that would prefer tax cuts for the richest in the country.
I think the Prime Minister must know that the Labour Party will never be taken seriously again as the party of low and middle income families. It was 5.3 million low income people that he hit in order to clamber aboard the Premiership. Now, the Prime Minister talks about this great tradition of Prime Ministers not going to by-elections. Let me remind him about what his predecessor, Tony Blair, said on his way to a by-election. I have never understood the recent convention that Prime Ministers stay away from by-elections. I'm joining the campaign trail because this by-election matters. I believe in leading from the front. Instead of leading from the front, hasn't the Prime Minister just put himself into his bunker?
Once again, Mr. Speaker, he never addresses the questions of importance. He wants us to believe that the Conservative Party are the party that helps the poor, but he opposes tax credits. He wants us to believe they help the low-paid, but they oppose the minimum wage. He wants us to believe the Conservative Party are the party of the family, but they voted against maternity leave. He wants us to believe that they're the party of 10 billion of tax cuts, but they won't tell us the consequences in public spending cuts. He can get by without substance for some of the time, but he'll never get by without substance all of the time.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to add my own expressions of sympathy and condolence to the family and friends of the British serviceman who tragically lost his life in Afghanistan. And I'm sure the whole House agrees that a failure of our mission in Afghanistan would be catastrophic. An increase in terrorism, more hard drugs on the streets of our towns and cities, instability in the region, more suffering for the Afghans themselves. But will the Prime Minister accept that perhaps more could be done to explain to the British people why success in Afghanistan is so vital? And perhaps that we need to be more candid about how long we will have to stay there. Does he agree with me that stabilising and rebuilding Afghanistan could take 30 years and that Britain must be ready to make that commitment?
Mr. Speaker, it will certainly take time, and I hope he'll agree with me that what we are doing in Afghanistan is the front line against the Taliban and them ever returning to power. It is a battle against Al-Qaeda and those people who want to use Pakistan and Afghanistan to bring Al-Qaeda back into power. It is also a fight. It is also a fight that we are having to re-establish government in Afghanistan under President Karzai. And I hope he will agree with our strategy, which is to use military force, but also to build up national and local government in Afghanistan and to give people a stake in the future by promoting the economic development of the country. So the strategy that we announced for Afghanistan, backed up by 7,800 very brave troops that are in Afghanistan, is to move not just by military means, but by civilian and local government reform and by economic development that will bring hope to people in the country.
Clegg, I'm grateful to the Prime Minister for that reply. That being the case, does he share my concern that much of our defence expenditure continues to be misallocated on Cold War priorities? For example, we're committed to spending £6 billion on the Eurofighter, but we're failing to deliver enough of the right kinds of armoured vehicles to our troops on the ground in Afghanistan. So will the Prime Minister now commit to undertake the first strategic defence review in 10 years to ensure that our troops are properly equipped for the new kinds of conflict that they are now facing?
Speaker, I think he might know that we've spent £6 billion on urgent operational requirements in addition to the ordinary defence budget for the work that is being done by our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think he'll also know that when it comes to giving our fighting troops the equipment that we need, we have made major investments both now and for the future, including in tanks and helicopters for Afghanistan. And when it comes to Eurofighters, these are strike aircraft, and I think he will recognise that they are of use in the theatres of war in which we are operating. But I think he'll also welcome the announcement yesterday that the aircraft carrier order will go ahead, benefiting almost every shipyard in the United Kingdom.